All right, so we get the question often like, how often should we get adjusted? And this is a great question. I'm going to give you a backstory to this. There is science behind this that's been done that's kind of nailed down how often we should get adjusted and when degeneration starts to break down. But a little bit about the clinic we have here is you'll see once you come in here, we have a lot of young people, even kids. We have a lot of pregnant women coming in as well. Earlier in my career when I started, and typically people associate chiropractic with a lot of older people. And I did see a lot of old people, but the problem I had was too often, this happened way too often, I would get people in and we do x-rays on them and these people are in some serious pain, having some serious problems, and we do x-rays on them and their entire spine looks like this. They're nearly bone on bone. They're all twisted and gnarled in all these different ways. And this takes decades to get to this point. And I'm at the point where I basically have to say, we can help a little bit, but for the most part, you're screwed. And that's a really crappy conversation to have with somebody. And I would go home frustrated often and, talking to my wife about it. It's like, I want to, how do I help people before this? How can I, it's just way too frustrating because I want to get people better. That's why I'm in this. I have love and passion for everybody that comes in here. And I want to make a difference. But at some point, it's just tough. And so she said, well, why don't you just start seeing people younger? Get them before the problem. And I'm just like, well, we can't do that. Why not? Well, how am I going to get them to come in? It's like, well, you got to educate them. Teach them why. And, it doesn't seem like that should be as profound as it is. But really, my approach now is like a dentist. Those of you with kids, when did you take your kids to the dentist for the first time? When they were 2. Did you take them there because they had a toothache? No, you took them there because you didn't want them to get a toothache, because you want them to help them have teeth when they're 90. That's why we go to the dentist, and that's really exactly what chiropractic is about as well. We've been pigeonholed into this little back pain category, but that's really not what it's about. It's how do we keep your body functioning and working on as great a level as possible. Because when we look at the deeper level, it's not about what your range of motion is, not how good your back feels. It's like how good does your body function and how well are you able to do and live the life that you want to live. So what controls everything in our body? It's our brain. Controls and regulates everything. When you digest your breakfast, it's a signal from your brain telling your stomach to do that. When your kidneys are processing and filtering things, if you want to move your arm, it's a signal from your brain. I push something where I feel it in my arm, touch something. It's a signal from the brain. I see sirens on the street. I go into fight or flight mode. Boom, it signals from my brain. It's all brain-body connection, and that's ultimately what chiropractic is about. How do we make sure your brain and your body talk to each other on as great a level as possible, as much as possible, for as long as possible? That's the big picture, and that's why my kids started getting care from the time they were born. And it's, in just bigger effects. And there's been research that have done when people get adjusted regularly, at least once a month, for long periods of time. So, and some of this is showing like when we're getting closer to 3, 4, 5 years, there's research that shows that the immune system is working 200, 300, and even up to 400 times more effectively than people who aren't under chiropractic care. And those are special circumstances when we're getting to that 400. But, like my kids, do they ever get sick? Sure. But I can only remember one time one of my kids was sick for longer than a day. Typically, if they have something, by the next day, they're fine. Their friends get the same thing. They're out for a week, sometimes even 2 weeks. What's the difference? It's not that we just got lucky. There's something to what we're doing here. 80 to 90% of all kids get ear infections. My kids have never had an ear infection. Did we get lucky? My chiropractic friends, their kids, they've never had ear infections, or we're just the lucky 10% group? No, there's something to what we're doing here, and it's about how do we keep the brain and the body functioning on as high a level as possible. Now, Getting back to the original question, how often should we get adjusted? Well, the research shows after we have dysfunction in a joint, and so this is we boil it down to as basic level as possible, joints are supposed to move, right? That's the whole reason they exist. The reason, again, we focus on the spine, houses part of your central nervous system. And so if there's something in there that's stuck, fixated, misaligned, not working the way it should be, research shows that about 18 days, this starts moving into a degenerative process. First thing that happens when things are not moving right, we start moving into that 18 and beyond days. First thing we'll start seeing is that aberrant stress that's created from that dysfunction will start pulling things in different ways. Now we're going to start, feeling muscles are going to start pulling things to the side, pulling things in different ways. We start feeling that tension. Our posture starts to change. Some of those curves that we're supposed to have may start straightening out. So again, we look at what's the function of a joint? To move. What's the function of a muscle, though? Function of a muscle is to move a joint. Well, if that joint is stuck and not working right, not only is it going to get grumpy, but now that muscle is going to be going, well, crap, you're supposed to be moving. Come on, what are you doing? And so now that muscle spasms, does that sound familiar? Boom, that's tightness in a certain muscle. Does that sound familiar? So that's what we're dealing with here. And after about 18 days, it starts moving us into that state that, over time moves us down this chart. We start thinning out in those discs. We start getting this arthritis in here until eventually things start fusing together. So for the most part, everybody's coming in starting at different points. So someone who started, care when they were an hour old, like my kids, versus someone who started care at 65, we're going to need different levels of care. So imagine going to the dentist for the first time at 65. Your dentist is probably going to have a few things to say. Most likely we're going to have some issues to deal with. So everybody's a little different, but typically, for the most part, most people, we're checking people twice a month. We keep it under that 18-day window. We check people every 2 weeks. Keeps us within that window. We keep things as free and clear as possible. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you listening. And, on your journey to health, just remember, we just want to get started, get moving. Don't worry about making things perfect at the beginning. Just make that commitment to make things better each and every day.